So seems Grace is not with us yet. So I think we can get started first, if that's okay with you.
I think now we should start because it's already 1:35 here.
Yes, please go ahead.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Good morning and good afternoon to all. Welcome to the session on advancing internet freedom in Asia Pacific by applying UNESCO's Internet Universality ROAM principles and indicators. My name is Nirjana Sharma and I'm program coordinator at UNESCO Kathmandu office. And today I'll be serving as your moderator for this session. UNESCO has been supporting the governments to map the situation of their digital environment through the assessment of Internet Universality indicators in several countries. Therefore, in this session, we will be hearing presentations from experts who are directly involved in this implementation of the national assessment in Pakistan, Thailand, Kenya, and Nepal. Before that, we have Mr. Michael Croft, UNESCO representative to Nepal, Ms. San Hong Hu, program specialist in UNESCO headquarters. Similarly, Mr. Simon Ellis. Simon is the author of Thailand IUI assessment. He was section leader at UNESCO Institute of Statistics for 12 years. And we have Sadaf Khan from Pakistan. She is co-founder of Media Matters for Democracy. Sadaf is the director of Media Matters for Democracy, and this is a non-profit based organization. And we have Tankaraj Aryal, General Secretary of Digital Rights Nepal, representing from Nepal. He has a strong background of law practice, and he is an advocate of freedom of expression for more than 15 years. Similarly, we hope Grace Githaiga, our expert from Kenya, will join us soon. She is the convener of Kenya ICT Action Network. To all the participants, I would like to request you to write down your questions directly to a panelist during the sessions, and also click the raise your hand option to put the question during the question and answer session. And in case of my connection issue, we have Mr. Santosh Sigdel, President of Digital Rights Nepal, who will further take the session moderation. So now, without taking more time, I would like to welcome Mr. Michael Croft, UNESCO representative to Nepal, for opening remarks. Over to you, Michael. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nirjana. And so anyway, before the experts speak, we're going to hear a little bit from a non-expert, and that's me. But I think that it's also, it's not bad to have the perspective of a non-expert, because as with so much of UNESCO's work, I have to look at these technical issues and say, okay, but really, why is this important? Why does anybody care and want to listen to me talk about something like this, especially if and how is this important to me? It's kind of important that I'm also to relate to it. My first experience with the ROAM principles actually happened a few years ago back in Vietnam, and it still is very much with me today. And so I think that basically the added value of the ROAM principles are really this: how do you talk about something that has no physical shape, has no end, and has no beginning? And I think that this was something that was particularly frustrating for member states in the past when trying to talk about the internet. So where do you start and where do you stop? And how do you even agree on the basic terms for discussion? And I think that this is first and foremost the added value of internet universality and the ROAM principles, because they provide a framework for discussion. In a way, they give us a language to talk to each other, something that we all recognize. So you don't have sort of this Tower of Babylon where everybody is speaking in different ways about the same thing. So I think first and foremost, that's why the ROAM principles are important, and that's why they add value. And that's why member states are interested in them. Secondly, of course, we have the accelerating digitalization of the wonderful world that we live in, which is very much due to the impact of COVID-19. And so the ROAM principles and internet universality take on an added dimension, I would say, of urgency in our discussions. So here in Nepal, not surprisingly, like other member states, this has been reflected in national priorities and in the conversation between UNESCO and the member state, as sure has been in the cases with the other colleagues in Thailand and also in Pakistan and Kenya. And so working with the government, the Kathmandu office has been able to support a national assessment of some of the indicators. I won't get into necessarily the findings. I mean, some of the figures which were provided to me are actually kind of interesting. I'll just mention them because they're easily comparable, again, to the situation in other countries. So from a population, I should also say that I'm a little bit new to Nepal. I've only been here for 4 weeks. But in a population of roughly 30 million, about 33% or maybe a bit more, there are 10 million, almost 11 million internet users in Nepal. Which increased, not surprisingly, in the last year. 13 million social media users as of the beginning of this year. And what I thought was a little bit interesting was at the beginning of this year, there was about 38.5 million mobile phone connections. So equivalent to about 131%. That's not really that interesting. What is interesting is that the number of mobile connections in Nepal decreased. They declined by 4 million in the last year, which I suspect also has something to do with COVID. So obviously, too, the purpose of the ROAM principles and what we do this is to inform legislation. We talk a lot about making evidence-based decisions, and of course, the government wants to do this. All governments want to make evidence-based decisions as they start to explore the area of legislation and the net and the internet. And so what the ROAM principles do and the frameworks and the indicators that come up provide government with a way to collect information and make evidence-based decisions, which is exactly what they would like to do in Nepal. And it facilitates a discussion between member states. And I think that we're going to hear a bit about different experiences in Thailand, experiences in Pakistan, and experiences in Kenya. And it makes it easy for different partners and also the member states to compare and contrast and look at what works and what doesn't work. So to have comparative studies, if I can put it this way. So again, this added value of the ROAM principles help and the framework and the indicators breaking down this very sort of complex space into something where we can have a sound, logical, informed discussion about opportunities and about challenges. I think if I had to put it that way, that's my way as a non-expert of understanding the ROAM principles and internet universality and why it's important to UNESCO and why we're having discussions like this. So I think finally, I just want to thank everyone at the Asia Pacific Regional Internet Governance Forum and all the partners for contributing to the discussion today. And I think it will be a very interesting one. And it's especially interesting for me to learn a little bit more about what the ROAM principles and internet universality means in the context of Nepal, which of course is my own personal remit and where I need to be working. So thank you very much, friends. Thank you very much, partners, for listening to the non-expert today. And I will turn it over to the next speaker. Thank you very much, and warm greetings. Namaste from Kathmandu.
Thank you very much, Michael. I would like to welcome Ms. Sanhong Hu, UNESCO Program Specialist, for her presentation. You will have 10 minutes for the presentation, Sanhong.
Thank you very much. I trust you could see my screen.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It gives me great pleasure to be here to present UNESCO's Internet Universality project. I'd like to thank Niajana for convening this session, and also Michael for your very insightful remarks. So first of all, what is Internet Universality? What is the ROAM principles? As Michael rightly put forward, that Internet is such an invisible but a massive, pervasive, and ubiquitous existence in our age. How we govern it, how we can develop it in a way to support the sustainable development of human rights and all the fundamental values we have cherished as human beings. So UNESCO has developed 4 fundamental principles, frameworks, which is called the Internet Universality. As simple as that, as you can see from this logo, that the Internet has to be based on human rights, that's R. Internet has to be open, that's O. Internet has to be accessible by all, that's A. Then the entire internet and the data transformation should be governed in a manner of multi-stakeholder participation. Actually, ROAM's frameworks, they are not new to Asia Pacific ITF. I also like to send my warmest greetings to let me admit someone to come in this room. Actually, we had actually developed these 4 ROAM principles and indicators in the global consultation, including several times at Asia Pacific ITF. I really want to thank all those stakeholders in this region to have vibrantly contributed to our project. So why we do this? We already know that the internet is such a milestone of human development. How we ensure that, and also it's actually ongoing. We don't see where it will really go forward to. That's why we need to set a direction. We should have to base the internet and a digital transformation to be underpinning this universal values as embodied by ROAM principles. Only in this way we can ensure that the internet is developed in a very humanistic way, and also to mitigate the potential risks. That's really the huge topic for all of us. As the internet is really the biggest elephant in the room, that the 4 principles, they are also very broad. How we can measure them and ensure that member states, the national state, and also stakeholders can comply with, can adhere to these 4 fundamental principles in reality, in the implementation. So we need a very evidence-based, a very empirical methodology. That's why the 303 indicators were developed to measure to what extent human rights, open internet, inclusive access, and a multi-stakeholder approach are being implemented at a national level by all stakeholders. So I'm encouraging all of you to download this UNESCO publication of Internet Universality Indicators. It's available in multiple languages. It will give you a very comprehensive picture of how we can measure the internet and the digital transformation. So to unpack these 303 indicators, actually to facilitate the national assessment, we also identify 109 core indicators across these 5 categories to ensure still a very comprehensive mapping, but allowing for less resources to collect data and to still offer a very solid assessment and provide the recommendations so as to merge the gaps and improve the policies. So as you can see that ROAM principles has been illustrated by such a package, which including one overarching themes of policy, legal, and regulatory frameworks. We call it institutional indicators. We measure all the policy dimensions related to human rights, openness, access, and multi-stakeholder participation, as well as a newly added category of indicator, which is addressing the cross-cutting issues such as gender equality. Basically, they are related to all the ROAM categories, and also children empowerment, youth development, sustainable development, and trust, security, and legal ethical dimensions, etc. Under each category, we also identify the major theme areas. As we know, internet is massive, the human rights is broad. We identify most critical semantic areas such as freedom expression, rights of access to information. Yesterday and today, we are celebrating the International Day of Universal Access to Information. UNESCO has been organizing globally and nationally a number of events to foster the universal access to information as a basic human rights. So this area is well covered by the ROAMs. Then we also look at how internet can contribute to the freedom of association, the democratic participation, and then the right of privacy very often is ignored in many circumstances. Then we also look broader at the implication of internet as a social culture rights, social economic and cultural rights. So look at that. That's how we measure the rights dimension. Same for other category like open internet. We look at not only open technological standard, but also we look at open in markets, how internet industry is being diverse in a certain country, and also open content. That's also at the heart of NESC's mandate. Open data and open government, and accessible to all. We also go far beyond the physical infrastructure level, look at all dimensions related to the quality, inclusiveness of the access, such as affordability, the equal access by geographical areas, and the local content and multiple language, multilingualism. And also from this year, United Nations celebrating the UN decade of the protecting multilingualism and indigenous language. That's also one of the focus of this ROAMs indicator. Also, again, the skills, digital competencies, literacy, also one major theme under this this package. I wouldn't go very much detail, just want to highlight some very unique strengths and beauty of this ROAMs indicator, because you might ask me that actually there are a number of indicators by different organizations to measure the digital transformation, such as those done by ITU, done by OECD, which many of the countries already are measuring. What UNESCO bring to the table? I would like to tell you that first thing, as you see that this indicator is based on a universally endorsed framework by UNESCO member states. We have 194 member states. They all agree to this principle. That makes a very good basis to go forward to measure and implement them. And also you can see that we have very strong strengths in measuring human rights in a very comprehensive manner, holistic manner. All rights are really measured in a very indivisive way. And a multi-stakeholder approach is very special. I think that's maybe only one set of indicator to measure the multi-stakeholder governance in all the existing indicators and tools, and a clear focus on the digital inclusion, on the people with disabilities, different languages, and also the methodology. We also follow our very truly inclusive multi-stakeholder approach. I will elaborate a bit in the later slides. As you see that my colleague Niyajana just mentioned that Nepal has just kicked off the national assessment of ROAMs indicators. Actually, we have a few other Asian Pacific countries. We are already doing so. So really congratulations to all of you for embracing this ROAMs toolkit. And in terms of methodology, it's not a academic research. We count on it as a policy dialogue, policy debates, policy research. So the first step is really to conduct a very inclusive multi-stakeholder consultation with all the national actors, ranging the national governments, the ICT ministries, to the civil society, to the human rights advocates, and also technical community. I saw several technical community colleagues in the room, such as Internet Society, such as Data Asia. They are all included in this consultation, and also they should be represented on this multi-stakeholder advisory board we are creating for every country when they kick off their assessment. Then second step, independent of this MAB, we need to compose a collaborative research team, which should cover different expertise required by the ROMICS. Given our experience that, the ROMICS indicators, they are really come across a number of different disciplines. You need a human rights expert, you need the experts who knows about the access, you need the expert who has the international view, experience of multi-stakeholder participation, and also open internet, open markets, some economic aspect. It's not a one person's job, but definitely should be a research team. Then we have the research team work in regular consultation with the MAB to do the research, collect data, and formulate the draft recommendations, because the objective of the entire assessment is not just to set out the status quo, but also to identify the achievements and also gaps and what can be improved. So we put in a number of recommendations for different stakeholders. What should the governments do more to improve? What should the civil society and the technical community should do more to improve certain areas? Last step, to finalize everything, we also count on every country who are assessing ROMICS to organize a national validation workshop to have all stakeholders participating, to trigger a real debate on those recommendations. What policy, what action should be taken as a priority following the assessments. So far, we are having 33 countries assessing ROMICS indicator. I like to stress that ROMICS indicator assessments, they are really on voluntary basis. It really depends on the will and the readiness, interest of the national stakeholders. When there's a consensus built at the national level to go ahead with ROMICS assessment, UNESCO, both from HQ and our field office, like our office in Nepal, will be ready to provide all the technical support throughout the entire process. As you can see, in Asia, we have the ROMICS assessment ongoing in Thailand, Nepal, Palestine, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Cambodia, Mongolia, Kazakhstan, and also there are 5 islands on the Pacific recently joining, because the ROMICS indicator was more and more accepted and welcomed by a number of countries and also international development agencies. They found that whenever they want to do a digital transformation related work, the ROMICS serve a very good needs assessment to inform what international interventions could be put in place. The latest report is from Germany. We just launched last week. It's an excellent model project. I also encourage all of you to go to our website and read those national reports from other countries, which can be also inspiring. Basically, ROMICS indicator, and in the 3 years application, it has proved its universal relevance to all countries. I almost finished all the essential part of my presentation. Just give you some very vivid idea of how it looks like the MAB as you can see from the picture, that in different countries, they really organize a regular MAB meeting to discuss the data, to discuss the methodology as a scientific guidance, but they wouldn't, or they are not supposed to intervene in the real research, because the assessment needs to be neutral, needs to be objective. Research needs to be solid and delivered by the researchers. Then to finish their assessment, they are organized 1 day, half day, full discussion to look at the recommendation one by one, to build a consensus on what the future action should take to improve and shape the national internet governance and digital policies. Internet aromics is not only universally relevant to all countries, but also should be applied to all digital technologies. One of the hot topics is about artificial intelligence. So we have also ROAMics to be operationalized to guide the entire digital technology development. So that's also another important resource I suggest you to download and use for your policy work. And I welcome all of you, my dearest Asian Pacific stakeholder, to join the ITF Dynamic Coalition on ROAMics. We are organizing an annual presentation in the forthcoming ITF in Poland. At the time, we are able to showcase all the progress in those 33 countries. So I'm here to engage with you, and also we look forward to see you and hear more from you in a global ITF in Poland by the end of this year. Thank you. I'm going to put the links to the chat and also ready to respond all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sang-Hoon, for your insightful presentation. Now moving along to our knowledge sharing session. We have 4 panelists who will present about IUI in the countries that they have been doing the assessments. This session will be of 20 minutes and each panelist will have 5 minutes. To start this session, I would like to welcome Mr. Simon Ellis. Based on his experience on the IUI assessment, Simon will be speaking about the Asian culture and character of the internet and why IUI is important in this extremely diverse Asia Pacific region. You have 5 minutes, Simon. Thank you.
Thank you, Shoshana. See if I can everybody see my screen? Oh.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to be speaking particularly about the implementation of IUI in Thailand. The initial draft was produced by 2 Thai researchers, and I reworked the report in 2018 to 19. I think I need to go back. I'm not at the start. There we go. So I first want a few remarks about Asia Pacific. I think IUIs are particularly important in Asia Pacific because of certain processes that are going on in the region, and I will go back over those. I feel really privileged to be able to speak at the Asia Pacific IGF, and I feel really cut off from all my Asian friends because of COVID at the moment. And COVID in itself has transformed some of the internet experience in terms of the needs for online education, for e-health systems, and building communities. I will bring out some of these points later on as applies to Thailand, so I won't dwell too much on this slide. But many Asian countries are particularly addressing or trying to grapple with issues, for example, of rights, of limiting hate speech and abuse and online abuse, but at the same time they have to balance that with freedom of speech, and this has produced problems in several Asian countries in the last few years. Open technology, open systems, the technology moves forward very fast in the internet. Everybody has talked about the Internet of Things, and Asia is at the front of some of those developments. And so once again, IUI is particularly important to see these developments in context. One of the things that I see as happening is almost as well that IUIs can pull out some of the regional differences that the internet has developed. As the internet becomes part of our society as a whole, it's natural that it develops particular characteristics in particular countries. And I see in Asia that there is, for example, online civic activism is particularly important. That there are new applications. There are applications and platforms such as Line and Grab, which exist in Southeast and East Asia, which don't really exist in OECD countries. And equally well, I know that there's a particular character in this sense in South Asian countries too. There is a mixed level of development as well if we compare OECD to Asia. In some ways, Asian countries have a more advanced, for example, online financial world than in OECD. In OECD, we're kind of stuck in the traditional credit card payment systems and so forth. And we note that in the US, for example, it's only in the last few years that they've moved beyond signing for a credit card payment, which is like almost 19th century technology as far as most Asian countries are concerned. However, one of the things that still exists in many Asian countries is this sense of a digital divide. There are still, even in Asian countries which are very advanced, there are more remote rural areas, particularly with elderly populations that are unserviced or who are not using the internet. In Thailand itself, I started with this slide and I jumped forward. The IUI assessment was first conducted very early on in the process, as an example, by 2 Thai researchers. And then that, as I said, I reworked it following from their initial work. What's briefly to pick out a few results from this. One of the key areas of IUI is this principle of parallel rights in both the physical world and the digital world. And I've mentioned that this problem that governments are all facing of balancing out freedom of expression with tackling abuse, particularly fake news and hate speech. We also see from a kind of international perspective, right to information emerging issues such as access to information, SDG 1610, and then data protection, where several countries have adopted the European General Data Protection Register, but that is having, again, there are implications coming through which need to be developed in how that is applied in different contexts. In access-wise, Thailand is making a lot of big strides, and they are actively trying to integrate all these remote and disadvantaged communities online. And there are 2 examples there. Net Pracharat is a government initiative, and Net Arsa is a telecoms private sector initiative. I also think it's important there's this sense in IUI of taking the technology, but also work it through to the impact on society. And some of the things that happened there, for example, that in the past in Thailand, there's been a number of innovative tech pilots which have been put in place, which haven't been fully followed up. And so there's a question both of funding here, but also of, again, of government support and of general making sure that these new ideas which exist in all Asian countries are able to really see their worth. Very early on, Thailand developed an open source hospital management system, which was very innovative and taken up in several countries, but has disappeared. But under current circumstances, that was a real loss, as it were. More recently, Thailand, among many countries, has sought to identify the frequency in TV spectra, which is unused, and apply that to rural communities. and that has seen some success, and again, I feel should be developed. Then many Thai specialists have also been looking at remote management of farms, which has become particularly important as Asian countries have aged and urbanized. Many people are left with older generation families back in these rural locations who need help from their children and from their broader family, but have to have difficulty finding that online. And then lastly, an aspect, so IUI has some core indicators, but they also have some non-core indicators. But some of the non-core indicators can also be significant. So for example, Southeast Asian countries have struggled a lot with e-waste, which was in a few years ago, at the very least, exported by other countries and was disposed of in Southeast Asia. And provided a lot of discussion online as to how this should be disposed of more equitably. And there is still, though, some evidence of both poor working conditions in dismantling and recycling, and also the dumping of e-waste in Asian countries. So I think that's probably, yes, that's my 5 minutes up, I think, Jana. So I will pass you back to the host. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Simon. And now I'd like to request Ms. Sadaf Khan, co-founder of Media Matters for Democracy, for her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jana. And because we have only a limited number of time, I will not repeat a lot of very valid things and that have been already shared by the previous speakers. Simon already covered most of the important processes that make IUI relevant to APAC region. What I want to add is simply that Asia Pacific is a very challenging region. While the regions across the world contain various aspects of diversity within them, I think there's no other space where diversity is perhaps as stark. When you go to the south, we have countries like Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh, for example, which has very vastly different economies than the countries in the South and Southeast Asia, like Thailand, Vietnam, and Korea. And the difference between the politics and the economy, the socio-political structure between these countries is so different that we have struggled as a region to come up with a united, a common language to speak, per se. I think Michael mentioned earlier in his presentation that the IUIs do give us with a common language to speak, and I think this can't be more true in the context of Asia and Asia Pacific, where the diversity within regions, where the diversity within the populations, the communities that are connecting to the internet, and the challenges that they face range from, you know, e-waste that was just mentioned to Taliban cracking down on women using the internet, for example. So yeah, I think within that context, it's really important to think of the IUIs that present as activists, specifically the civil society working across these different regions. I think they present us with a common language to speak, a unified framework on which we can engage. Nationally in Pakistan, as the research lead for the IUI assessments, I can say that in addition to acting as a research framework, so far what I've seen is that the framework has also given us the language to engage with various stakeholders. As must be obvious by Jianu's detailed presentation, the scope of the indicators is vast. My own organization, Media Matters for Democracy, is one of only 3-4 organizations in the whole country who focus on digital rights agenda consistently. And still, even for us, there were many areas within the IUI framework that we had not engaged with. So as a part of the engagement, we have not, as the part of the assessment, we haven't just been able to look at these areas from a research point of view, but also explore which individuals, which experts, which public bodies are kind of working on those arenas, and which has made the whole work on digital rights and the possibilities of work on the digital rights internet governance sphere kind kind of richer by connecting us with so many different people. It has allowed us to expand our own vision of internet regulation. But the important thing is that, this learning is not limited to me or my research team or my organization, but because the research process works through the creation of a multi-stakeholder advisory board, as we have gone through different meetings of the MAP, we have continued to introduce these new learnings, these new connections, the new maps that we are generating, so to say, with the members of the multi-stakeholder advisory board. And even though even the first draft has not been shared with the MAP members yet, we have already initiated discussions with different members, with different stakeholders, on ideas to work together collaboratively on some emerging challenges that we can already see through the initial process of the assessment. Pakistan is a developing country. We have a very colonial history. And this does create a number of challenges when we are talking about an assessment at a national level. There is a certain resistance from the state, which in most post-colonial nations feel like it's the custodian of information, and especially information that kind of may have an impact on the image of the country itself. So we have faced various challenges in terms of data access, but what I feel is important, that it's not just the excess that we have identified, it's not just the excess that has come across as challenge, but we have been able to identify various points in which, even the state and the public bodies have shared their own challenges with us, resulting in us collaboratively talking about research frameworks, about ways to collect the data. I'll give an example. Obviously, gender disaggregated data is a huge challenge in most countries of the global south, I'm sure. And in Pakistan, this has been a challenge. We don't have gender disaggregated data. Sorry about that. My daughter has a fever. She stayed back from school and keeps asking me for stuff. Really sorry. Yeah. So when we talked to the regulator about the unavailability of the data, one thing we found out was that, because in Pakistan, most of the women who are using the internet, they don't have SIMs registered in their own names. They do not have internet connections registered in their own names. They're using digital devices and services bought in the name of the men of the family. So it was not just an aspect of the regulator not willing to collect the data, but a very political, social issue that hindered them from collecting authentic data. So by the virtue of the fact that we're, regulators are engaging, all the stakeholders are engaging, we are finding out different perspectives that perhaps were not well reflected earlier. So I see that as a potential. I'm sure there are similar experiences in different countries where the framework is being administered. And yeah, so for me, it has been really interesting and really significant to find all these different connections while working on the research that are not particularly research based, but give ideas and connections, creates allies of sorts to help push the agenda of internet universality further. I think I'd end there. I didn't know the time, but I think I'm over my 5 minutes. Thank you so much, Nirjana.
Thank you very much, Sudha, for the time management also. Now I would like to invite, I think he will be our last expert, because Grace has not yet joined from Kenya. So I would like to invite Mr. Tonka Orial, General Secretary of Digital Rights Nepal, for his presentation.
Hi, thank you, Nirjana ji. Very good afternoon from Kathmandu. So first of all, I would like to thank to APrIGF and the whole UNESCO team to provide opportunity for Digital Right Nepal to engage in country assessment on this IUI. And I'm here to share our experience on working this IUI assessment in the case of Nepal. I echo some of the challenges faced in Pakistan by Sadaf and some context shared by Michael from Thailand. Starting from the country context, it really matters like where we are right now in the case of like e-participation index, e-government index, and internet penetration and the internet freedom index. that has direct relation with the internet freedom and the internet ecosystem. As you can see in the presentation, that like we are, I mean, Nepal is not that much good condition, but it's still like moving toward like having certain infrastructure and the legal mechanism to protect rights and the ensure internet freedom and internet access to everyone in the country. So in this context, we are working to assess the country, from the IUI perspective. When we started, assessing the country context from the IUI perspective, we came like to know from the constitutional and the legal, guarantee that we have like freedom of speech, association, assembly, privacy, and the freedom of expression that is guaranteed by the constitution. At the meantime, government effort to ensure internet and the digital technologies accessibility and the infrastructure, government has adopted some of the document like bill on information technology. It is still in the parliament. Similarly, government has introduced this digital Nepal framework that envisions some digitally enabled and the digitally equipped Nepal in the whole governance process. Similarly, ICT policy, broadband policy to 2015, Spectrum Policy 2013, and amendment on 2017, National Mass Communication Policy 2015, and National Cybersecurity Policy, which is draft, and it is still consultation. These are some of the backbones, legal backbones to discuss on these contexts. So I got a message that like presentation is not there. Nizanaji, can you help me to share my presentation? I'm doing from my side, but I don't know whether it's happening or not. So shall I continue?
I'm just opening your PowerPoint.
Okay. I mean, considering this APrIGF, which has identified three main themes, those are the inclusion, sustainable, and the trusted, inclusive, sustainable, and the trusted internet. Through our DEX review, we have identified some of the issues that are very pertinent in the case of Nepal. Those, let me go through. If we discuss about the inclusion, the accessibility is one of the key area, considering the diverse geography and the difficult geography. The access of internet is not that much easy, considering to other countries. Many people are still out of internet access. Similarly, the price is equally one of the important dimension to enhance the accessibility of the internet. Considering the national GDP and the per capita income, the internet cost is not that much like affordable in the case of Nepal. Similarly, language and the local content is another challenges in the case of Nepal, because until and unless local content support and generate the interest of the people, it doesn't move that much fast. Similarly, considering the difficult geography and the digital education and the knowledge among the stakeholder and the beneficiary and the user, and the sustainable investment on internet ecosystem and the infrastructure, those are the key aspect of the sustainability. Similarly, in some cases, among the agencies and the stakeholder, there is a trust gap and the mistrust, and the even trust on system is not in that level which should be to apply in the use of the internet and the ICT technologies. Similarly, data protection and the system security are the issue of the trust and the government censorship, and because of the surveillance and the government counter action to the individual actions and the speech, the self-censorship are also some issues of the trust in this between. Regarding to the progress so far in the applying ROAM principle is not only the act of assessment, it is the long-term vision to make the sustainable internet ecosystem. So in that case, with the partnership of UNESCO, Digital Right Nepal has started working on that, and the formation of the multi-stakeholder advisory board is there. A number of meetings have been held with them, and the DEX review have been completed, and the stepping to national assessment as the multi-stakeholder process, because we are reaching out to the different stakeholders and getting their views and the gathering information to bring the different perspective and the issue which should be or which must be included within these national assessment. While doing these and the having meeting with the different stakeholders, we have come up with some challenges.
I cannot hear Tanka.
As well, those challenges are quite common in South 11 in the case of Nepal. Yeah, taking time new standard of these and the making them understand these are really challenging. Similarly, we have found that like there is a very like inadequate coordination and collaboration among the agencies. As this pardon please, are you listening me?
Tanka, your sound is breaking.
Okay, is it still breaking?
It's better
Technology,
now.
sorry.
It's better now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So, inadequate coordination and collaboration is another challenges we have faced. Even within the government agencies, there is a very weak collaboration we found, and the as we have like taken this as the multi-stakeholderism is in the early stage, bringing all stakeholders together, and their perspective is really difficult to work. But we are working to promote the idea of the IUI and the bringing the idea and the perspective from different stakeholder. Similarly, the COVID context remains challenge to reach out to the wider stakeholder in person, and we found very less studies and research in the case of internet freedom, internet ecosystem, and the perspective. Based on these challenges and the context, we have highlighted key for forward. Those are like as Thailand, Pakistan, and other countries have already implemented this IOI. Assessment has been already done. We would like to learn from the international and regional experience to enhance our work and to make a very comprehensive set of recommendation and the assessment to do advocacy in the coming days for to improving the internet ecosystem. Similarly, we are working to and we have to put more additional effort developing shared understanding among the stakeholder, and only a country assessment is not enough, and the advocacy through the wider civil society, collaborating with the civil society and the media to promote ROAM principle and the making internet and IUI principle and the indicator applicable and the practice in the case of Nepal. Those are our way forward based on our assessment. And similarly, we are trying to enhance, strengthen internet freedom that definitely protect the human right and enhance the accessibility of the people's on the different services and the including education. That is really important to enhance or to protect and to enjoy the human rights that have enabled through the internet. At the meantime, access to internet as the fundamental human right is also a key issue to promote through this ROAM principle and the indicator. So we have been working and expecting support, technical support from the UNESCO and other regional countries and the partners and organization to complete our assessment and to come up with some clear-cut and the comprehensive idea to implement those in the case of Nepal. So I would like to thank you here and back to Nirjanaji.
Thank you very much, Tankaji. Now, I would like to request participants to raise your hand or drop your question in the chat box if you have any question. We have only 7 minutes left to end the session. So we have a question from Bong. How does UNESCO enjoin member states' compliance to these indicators? Maybe Sanhong would like to address this question.
Yeah, but I don't understand very well the question. Could you please repeat?
How does UNESCO enjoin member states' compliance to these indicators?
Oh yeah, I saw it. Thank you. First of all, as I said, ROAM framework contains actually two parts, two levels. One level is at the level of principles, ROAM principles, human rights, open access by all, and multi-stakeholder. These four ROAM principles have already been endorsed by UNESCO's 194 member states back in 2015 in the 38th General Conference. So that's universal acceptance, compliance already by the member states. They all agree to these ROAM principles that in the digital age, these four fundamental principles should be applied to their national digital ecosystem. Then on the second layer, that indicators. So how we know these four principles are being implemented by national stakeholders. So we have actually a second resolution by International Program of the Development of Communication, IPDC, also representing all the member states, to encourage a voluntary assessment of indicators to check to what extent they have really operationalized these four principles in reality, to endorse and to implement. There are some distance between these two things. So far that we really appreciate all the efforts made by our member states. They are really, really proactive in embracing these ROAMix indicators. Simply by initiating the assessment, we need the strong support from the member states and governments, and the results will continue to support our members to improve their compliance to these four ROAM principles. Actually, we are having a number of new countries. The ambassador, the country stakeholder express their interest to do the assessment in the pipeline. We are providing the support and then discussion. Of course, there are some challenges. I think many of the previous speakers already mentioned. We need more advocacy. We need more awareness raising and also training, capacity building to ensure that the country and the national stakeholder has the capacity resources to really ensure a very inclusive assessment, which will eventually lead to the ROAM principle to be fully applied in a country.
Thank you very much, Sanhong. I do not see any more hands raised, but there is one question in the chat box. That is by Winston. The question is that, have member states actually incorporated the ROAM principles and indicators into their national digital planning? Does UNESCO have precise data on this matter? Do the various national commissions in each country have precise data?
Yeah, perhaps I will answer this question as well. Actually, for those countries who are already in this pipeline of assessing the ROAMix indicators, that's exactly the objective, to integrate the ROAM in their national digital strategy. And many of them, they already took the results to implement. For example, in a country like Brazil, we assess the first assess the indicators in the country. They have a number of recommendations, if you can read it, which target different actors. Some actors, they already start to tackle the issues of, for example, gender equality in the digital policymaking process. And in some other country, like even in Germany, I recently followed their discussion. They already presented the ROAMX indicators assessment in Germany to the national parliament, the digital committee in the parliament. They will listen to what has been suggested by this assessment, and many suggestions are being really considered substantially in developing the national law, national regulation policies related to the digital transformation. It's a long process, it takes time, but we are really witnessing it's happening. So, and for that to take place, I called upon all stakeholders, governmental and non-governmental stakeholders, really to engage in this process to create a consensus, which will eventually lead to transformative results. Of course, the national commissions, they are well connected in this process, because first of all, it's a UNESCO framework, it's endorsed the position. We are encouraging voluntary assessment. It's actually several initiatives are really put forward by the National Commission of UNESCO, because they were with us. They like the ROAMX indicators. They are able to convince their national stakeholders. They are able to network with national actors to conduct assessment. If you see my screen, my slides, and I'm German National Commission, that is exactly the mover to have secured the assessment in the country. Same for many other countries. They are really well in this process. Thank you.
There is one more question from Santosh. Is UNESCO considering comparing these indicators with SDG indicators? So the progress in member states not adopting the IUIS yet could be assessed through the SDG indicators. So
yeah, that's a very good question. Actually, it's a very great suggestion. Essentially, all those UNESCO, ROAMX indicators, they are designed, they were developed in a manner to support the achievement of 17 SDGs cross-cuttingly, and they really contribute to achievement of SDG. And I think our colleague from Digital Rights Nepal also mentioned that there's an international and regional value of sharing these indicators. So we are, in our next step, we are also trying to combine the UNESCO's ROAMX indicators and how it complements and strengthen the ongoing SDG indicators assessment. Actually, it's already happening. UNESCO is cast body of SDG 1610.12 targets. We are already collecting data. We are working at the international, the global level, and also in many countries. When the country is assessing both SDG indicators and also ROAMX indicators, we are really consolidating our efforts. So perhaps Simon, you'd like to add more from the national perspective? Yes, please.
I can add more as well. I think Shan-Hong. So it's Simon. So the SDGs allow for thematic indicators which extend the SDGs into more depth in certain areas. And the IUIs in many ways function as a thematic set of indicators. These thematic indicators are also in place with UNESCO with culture and education, where different branches of UNESCO again have developed indicators that supplement the core SDG indicators and allow you to examine the topics in more depth. Thank you.
I'd like to take one last question. That is by Sadiksha Silwal. Accessibility of internet to all comes with great challenges like increase in data breach incidents, violations of right to privacy of users. How does UNESCO dealing with such challenges while implementing ROAM principles?
Thank you again. Let me try to also answer this very tough question. Yes, I think the data protection, privacy protection is one of the biggest challenge of the digital age, and it's getting bigger and bigger with the development of the new technologies such as artificial intelligence, big data, IoT. They are really the industry, the technology are based on massive data collection. If there are no strong protection of data in place, that it will be a disaster, losing battle that we can do something really retrospectively later. So that's why in this UNESCO publication of indicator, there's a whole theme. I think about 20 indicators dedicated to measure the privacy law, the data protection regulation, the regulator of data protection, and the users' perception and needs, to ensure a very comprehensive protection of privacy. And on the other hand, as you see that this assessment is also a matter of stakeholder engagement. We are also engaging with the privacy committee, like the International Conference of Data Protection Commissioners. We are engaging with them. They are fully aware of our indicators. We have consulted with them, and a number of national privacy and data protection authority also, they are referring to our indicators and also helping to provide the data. UNESCO, we are also now have a number of programs to support the privacy protection in different areas of digital policies. Even today and yesterday, as I said, that we are celebrating International Day of Universal Access to Information. We have to look at how privacy should be leveraged, should be prioritized while providing the access to information, open data, etc. So privacy is one of core issues, cross-cutting all the major dimensions of digital transformation.
Thank you very much, San Hong. Sorry, we cannot take more questions, I think, because we are already behind the schedule. Now, I would like to request our panelists to make their final statement. First of all, I would like to request Simon on how could more countries from the Asia Pacific initiate the ROAM indicators assessment?
Well, thank you, Nijana. I think that the manual is there. It's really important to do this in partnership and to follow the principles of UNESCO and to approach that. It would be very good for more countries to take this on. And it's important for Asia, as I've said, I think, to have this sense of measuring this holistic view of both the social and the impact, and how the technology influences and supports Asian societies and Asian culture.
Thank you very much, Simon. Sadaf?
So I think I would just like to say that in the end, the objective of the assessment is to create policy objectives. So as we go forward in more and more countries, yes, that's me, baby, sorry. I think it would be really important to make sure that we are simultaneously creating procedures and frameworks and networks that can actively advocate for the implementation of the policy recommendations that are coming out of the national assessments. Yeah, that's kind of it for me for in terms of the objectives and the impact that the assessments can create.
Thank you very much, Sadaf. Tomka?
Yes, thank you. So as I shared, that we are in the early stage of the country assessment, and we believe that this meeting and the networking throughout the region will help us to learn from the region and get one-on-one contact and get expertise from the Pakistan and the other like Thailand and the other region. We are very hopeful that we will complete this national assessment timely and build the synergy to advocate for the policy recommendation and the better internet ecosystem in Nepal, and the collaboration and the coordination as well as the support from the region and the certain specific countries really like expected from our side. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all for addressing this interesting topic. On behalf of UNESCO and Digital Rights Nepal, I would like to thank each one of you for your valuable participation. We are now at the end of this session. We are going to take a picture, so can you please turn on your camera?